All right, we're back, and really special guest for us today, a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, Tim Coghlin, head coach at St. Norbert College. 32 years there as a head coach, 5 national championships, numerous coach of year, coach of conference, and just has a resume longer than we have time. But like I said, a bit of mentor of mine, somebody I met probably 15, 16 years ago through a mutual friend, and has kind of been a steadfast. He's the guy that I'd always call to. You would be you kept things pretty simple for me in tough situations, and I was always appreciative. So thank you for joining us.
Yes, well, Cam, it's been enjoyable for certain, and looking forward to this chapter of what you guys have going next. And obviously, it's an honor to be on with Colonel Matt Smith. Thumbnail from the outside looking at Colonel Smith, it's a very impressive resume and something that we should all be thankful and appreciative for his service.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, and then like I said, we've got a chance just to connect here for 10 minutes prior to hitting record. But again, like Matt likes to talk hockey, likes to talk sport, he likes to talk leadership. So I guess just to start, again, your resume, Cogs, pretty impressive. And if you could maybe just give like an overview of your coaching. I know you 2 years at the alma mater and then kind of took over St. Norbert. So if you could just give your 10,000-foot view of where it started and where we are today.
Yeah, I grew up in Western Canada playing hockey in British Columbia. I actually thought I was going to be a motorcycle guy. Back in the 70s, it was, Evel Knievel was the ruler of the world, and I was actually a motocross racer at the time. And so I thought motorcycles was the way to go. Raced Canadian Nationals a couple of years, finished as high as 5th one year. And then you started to realize when you pull into these motocross tracks and all these families have RVs and they have practice bikes, and we're showing up in a 77 Ford Torino with my motorcycle strapped to the back on a rack. It's my mother and I by ourselves, and it's kind of like, yeah, this motorcycle is probably not going to be down our path here anytime soon. And then as I continued to get a little bigger too, and then by the time I was 16, I realized hockey was a better path for me. So played in the BC Hockey League. It was the Brett Hall era. So I was happened to be on the other side of the ice rink when he scored 105 goals that year, set the single season record in the BC Hockey League. We kind of thought Brett might be pretty good by then. And then, of course, he went on and did his part. And then I found my way to we're a faithful family. We understand things happen for a reason. And I ended up coming to Wisconsin to play college hockey. And that's where I didn't know it at the time, but I certainly do now. The Holy Spirit at work. That's where I bumped into my wife. And we dated for 5 years and then been married now for 33 years, headed for 34 here shortly. And during that time, it's been hockey, hockey, hockey. It's been one of those blessings. I haven't really had to step outside of the hockey world much. Odd jobs pick up here and there, but I've been involved at the ice rink every day of my life. I'm 61 years old now, and I can honestly say I've never worked a day in my life.
How awesome is that to be able to say that at 61? And congratulations on your upcoming of 34 years. As you get to 61 and you are able to process what you've accomplished as a coach, the impact you've had, how do you at 61-year-old Tim Coghlin define success?
Yeah, no differently than I have as a younger version. I think to me, it's all about the people. It's about the people you surround yourself with. It's about the people that we recruit, that we retain, that we help them. We help our young men in so many areas. We're part-time academic counselor. We're part-time social counselor. We're part-time relationship counselor. You just think of all the areas of life that we're coaching young men, and we also coach hockey. That's just one extra piece of what we do, I think, to help create the next generation of who comes out. And so what I'm most proud of, and we've been to 12 Frozen Fours, we've played 9 national championship games. We won 5. We lost 1 in double overtime. We lost 1 in overtime. So when we get there, we've been good. But as you reflect back, and we've got 5 different players that have been National Player of the Year. We have 65 plus All-Americans that have been developed within our program. The development piece is what's important to me. And so as I look back, and I'll talk about, over different time frames, the 90s. There's a young man who graduated from here in the mid to late 90s, and he went on to medical school and became a pancreatic specialist. Colin Ward, he's up just north of Toronto General Hospital, and he practices there. His wife graduated from here. She was a soccer player. She's a doctor. It's just interesting. The most appealing part of what I do now is I'm able to reflect on, look at how well our young men are doing in life. Look what they're doing in the world. Financial planners, vice principals of in education. We've got guys in the hockey world. You and I were talking off air about Spencer Carberry, one of our guys who's the head coach of the Washington Capitals. I mean, Carbs has one of 32 jobs in the world. So again, I think when we evaluate success, it's the success beyond college more than necessarily what you can't win everything. You can't win all the time. And that certainly doesn't define whether you are in a winning culture or not. And so I think setting up that framework, setting up that expectation. I'm not a coach that puts a letter in front of somebody and said, these are our rules, sign it. We just have a framework. We would call it GKP, Green Knight Pride. I started again in the 90s, and it's something that exists today. And it's how you carry yourself. It's how you comport business. It's how you operate in the classroom, how you operate. Last night, the draft is in Green Bay. I got a bunch of guys down at the draft. Well, I'm not worried about how they handled themselves in a public setting like that. I'm just not. I mean, it's just the expectation within the program. So there's a lot of things. Wins and losses are part of it. We teach hockey, but we teach a lot of other things as well. And I think that's true for almost all coaches.
Tim, I got a question for you. You've had a lot of assistant coaches over the years. There's a lot of folks you work with. There's a lot of coaches that you've mentored yourself, some of which have gone on to be successful. Some of them have gone on to, in the hockey world, some of them have gone on to be successful outside the hockey world. And I think that there's the perspective today that when you look at Instagram, when you look at social media, when you and you see this coach that, this is a quote unquote alpha, right? The person who yells, who screams, who's quote unquote hard. And people look at that and say, yeah, my kid's getting the discipline that he or she needs. And I say he or she, and I know you're the coach of men at St. Norbert, but what would you tell a coach today who is either maybe long in the tooth that thinks they've got it shacked, or what would you tell a coach today who's trying to break through in the hockey world at any level, at any echelon, whether it's peewees all the way through to juniors, maybe up until include the pros? What are some things that you would want them to know, especially as how you've carried yourself and how, like Cam just said, how successful you've been over the last 3 decades plus?
Yeah, well, I think, you want somebody who's passionate for sure, but passion can be misconstrued, I think, as well. So to me, leadership is clarity. You just have to be clear about expectations, about rules, what you're allowed, what you're not allowed. When you step on the ice with Cam, and I have a mutual friend who started his coaching career here, Luke Strand, who's the head coach at Minnesota Mankato. And Luke is on ice is as good as anybody there is out there at professional. Put him on the ice with the NHL All-Stars and he'll run a good practice and they'll get a lot out of it. Put them on the ice with the 6 and 7 and 8 year olds. Those kids will get a lot out of it. They just will. So I think there's different approaches. I don't know that the yelling, screaming, downhill thing even works anymore with kids. And, you're asking the wrong guy if you start by saying, if you look at social media, because I don't look at social media. I don't have a social media platform. I don't do Facebook. I don't do Instagram. I just don't. And I know that we have younger people around us who can do that kind of stuff. And so we allow that to transpire in that form. So I think the core principles of being a good human and trying to raise good humans and having them fit into the norm of society as opposed to the alpha style. I think for me, it's you have to show the passion, but you have to show the passion towards the person. It comes back to, it's all about people. It truly is all about people. You're not going to be there when some decisions get made. And you have to hope that the decision-making process that you've helped them develop as individuals takes over at the right time.
Thank you, Tim, very much. And on a lighter note, just for our listeners that are listening and not watching, Tim Coghlin has an unbelievable handlebar mustache. So that is, it is exceptionally well done. And Tim, if I could grow facial hair, I would. So sorry.
I think that's why he led with the motorcycle part, right?
I know, right? Yeah.
Hey, and I'm going back into the Harley game here shortly. I've been convincing my wife. I sold my Harley about 10 years ago. And I decided the craziness of people driving around, they just don't pay attention. Everybody's
Yeah.
staring at their phones, and it got too scary for me. And I'm like, I still have a dirt bike and I still ride at the track, and I feel safe out there because I control what happens next. But I think I'm getting back in the Harley game. So the mustache is the first thing that comes back.
All right. Well, it's admirable.
Cogs, I guess when I try to lay my own experiences over hearing you talk, and I would say are in pretty lockstep. And if you look at any of like the pillars of Matt and I and where I've got to in my life and career, but I didn't start there. I was not chasing people. I was chasing next. And what I found is when I got to Division III, that's when I found that. I found those relationships, and that's what filled my cup more. I mean, I often tell people like, some of the best players I ever recruited, I really didn't get to coach at Division I because I was on the road looking for their replacement. And so do you think that the level helped you? Do you think is that just you? Was there an evolution of that? Because again, it took me time to land at that conclusion, right? And again, you and I had many of those conversations through there, and I don't think you specifically told me, but you definitely guided me. And if I look back on those conversations, so how have you always been? Were you, again, 30 years ago, did you have that same understanding that this was the mission, or is that something that you were able to evolve as it went on?
No, I don't think it is articulated quite like that. Let me start by reverse engineering. I would tell you, having been here now for 33 years or 30, going into my 33rd and 34th overall, I never wanted to be a long time guy. Like, I looked around and I saw coaches that are in situations like mine that stayed for a long time. So my intention was never to be at St. Norbert long term. As a matter of fact, when we weren't sure, it was a club team when I took over in 93, 94, and we weren't sure if St. Norbert was serious about hockey. And I was coming from Stevens Point, who was very serious about hockey. I happened to be the captain on their first national championship team in 1989. They won again in 90. They won again in 91. Then I was back on staff in 92 as an assistant, and we played the national championship game and lost. And then I was on staff in 93 and we won. So I'm coming from a program that won a lot. I move over to Green Bay to St. Norbert. My wife didn't even give up her job. We kept her job, and I commuted for the better part of 2 years because I wasn't sure if St. Norbert was serious. And as I looked at it from the outside, I honestly never wanted to be the long-term guy. I never saw this vision for me. So my eyes have been open the entire time, and we evaluated every opportunity as they came. So again, I take the job in 90, call it 94. And by 1999, we're pretty good. And we've got highly competitive. We're playing national tournament. I got a call from Fairbanks. I flew up. I looked at the job on the Division I side. Here's a Division III guy who has a chance to look and evaluate. I was offered the position. My wife flew up. She was offered a job. So if we wanted to chase and move, we coulda, shoulda, woulda. Other people make decisions for other reasons. We made the decision not to go because it didn't feel like it was the right fit for us. So it's always, again, been about the people. It's been about the people around us. And as long as I've been able to do what I want to do, recruit the young men and families that I want to have around, and coach the game the way I want the game coached, and have our players play that way, I've just always looked at it like I'm the luckiest guy. So have there been opportunity? Yeah, there's a handful. I probably have talked on the Division I side, the searches 3, 4, 5 times during that time, was really only offered positionally the one job because I never went deep enough in any of the other jobs. So I've been open about it and open to see what comes next. But again, I believe that things happen for a reason. I know that I came to Wisconsin and found my wife, and I know that that's part of the Holy Spirit at work. And I think that's been a guiding principle for us as a family for sure. What I said on the front side to anybody that would listen is, I love what I do. I really do, but it's never going to cost me my family. It's never going to cost me. I watched a lot of coaches go through divorce. I watched a lot of coaches who seem to be chasing things that are almost immeasurable, and it costs them their family. And for me, I said I'll go back and work retail. I'll go do whatever else I need to do. It's not going to cost me my wife, and it's not going to cost me my family. So that's been a guiding principle, I would say, that has been true in the 90s. It was true in 2000. It was true in the 20s and all the way up. So, and then the other thing of it is that I look at too, and we mentioned some of, we cross paths with a lot of different guys. It's interesting. I fired 2 coaches during my entire time here. Both those coaches have come back to work on staff. Both of those coaches are here at some time or another. They're back. So even just because I pushed a guy out the door because he wasn't ready, but then invite him back when he is ready. And that's that learning curve of every single coach that's ever been here, volunteer or paid assistant coach that's gone away from the program over 30 has still stayed in touch, and they still try to help us. And I still get phone calls from Luke Strand about, hey, there's a kid playing in Philadelphia where his son plays. You should look at this kid. He's not going to play D1, but he's a real. They're still supporting the program at the highest level. So to me, that's a compliment to the program for sure, that the program has helped more than just young men, but it's helped other coaches grow as well.
Tim, what would you say? Because obviously your players are probably going to listen to this, even though you're not on social media. I can guarantee they're on social media, just so you know. And hopefully they listen to this because you're a tremendous human being, and I'm a better person today for having listened to the words coming out of your mouth and spent time with you on this podcast. So thank you. But what would you say to someone has St. Norbert on the horizon, right? Either they're at juniors, or maybe they're in high school, or maybe they're an up and comer, or they know someone that played at for you at some point over the last 3 decades. What would you say to them? What message would you give them? And I understand the Green Knight pride thing, but can you just dig a little bit deeper on what it means to play for you or to play for you or with you there at St. Norbert?
I think sometimes you get caught up in the glitz and the glamour, like the building or we get these sticks or these skates, and it's all
right.
The reality is, when it's all said and done, the biggest asset we have, again, is our locker room. It's our locker room. It's the guys inside that room who care about each other, who support each other, who hold each other accountable when nobody's watching. It's the guys in the room. So it's the land of the haves and the have-nots. St. Norbert on the D3 side certainly is in the land of the haves. We're actually building a new building right now that our men and women's programs are moving into. We'll be in there probably in the fall of 26. That will help in that capacity as well. But we do treat our guys like this is a Division I program. So when they walk through the door, head to toe, whatever they need, they get. And our guys understand that, and they appreciate that. They know that we go the extra mile to help them. I think helps them go the extra mile to help us. We're all in this together, right? I think it's a very positive environment to be in, knowing that all 26 guys on your roster are going to be in a better spot for the rest of their lives if they stay in the program and they graduate on time in 4 years, which all of our guys do. So we don't have guys jumping into the portal. We don't. I'm watching the D3 side right now, and out here in the West, there's a couple of guys at one of the top teams. It's their best forward. It's their top guy, and they're jumping in the portal. And it's like, I'm appreciative and I'm thankful to our guys that they see the value of what we're doing and that they are the legacy moving forward.
I just wanted to say, Tim, that how you described the program, and again, I've been associated with Cam just for the last several years. I would argue that your mentorship of Cam worked, and that's how he treated his guys, and that's how he looked at his program. And I just assumed that everyone got skates or sticks or jerseys and designed them and neck guards, all those little things to me that demonstrate pride, right? Pride in team, that I don't have to worry about where this is coming from, and yet the coach appreciates it. So in other words, that relationship that you've had with Cam, that I think it paid huge dividends, and that's how Cam cared for his team for the last 7+ years, just as a head coach. Over.
Yeah, Cam and I have had a very good relationship, and he was on the Division I side, and you could see the star in his eye in terms of what he's doing. And he would call me every now and again and want to talk about a Division III opportunity came up, and I would kind of give them my take. When you're immersed in it and you're in it as, pretty much everything about the other programs that you're out there and which ones might be a good fit and which ones might not, and why you might make a move and why you might not. And again, all you're trying to do is make the best decision you can with the information you have. And that's a relationship I've certainly enjoyed with Cam over time. And just as hockey coaches and guys who have similar ideas and similar philosophies.
Cogs, you've coached 3 generations. how have you evolved? How have you evolved to serve a different kid in the 90s to the 2000s to the 210s to the 2020s? Like, how have you evolved?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think several things have changed. Technology has changed. If you look at skates today, if you look at sticks today, if you look at what kids, that kind of thing. You think about in the '90s, you can put it to almost any other sport. Use the NFL because it's here in town. I mean, they used to come to training camp to get in shape. They would spend the first 2 weeks of training camp trying to get guys in shape. We don't do that anymore. I mean, our kids are year round. They're year round trainer. They've got year round training. We don't spend time in certain areas that we used to. So, those types of things have evolved. Certainly, I think the availability of knowledge to kids, they understand that those things have evolved. Some principles for me, like timing. I'm a guy who still has issues, drives my son crazy, who's 18, but I'm a timing guy. Like here in Green Bay, the quote from Vince Lombardi was, if you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. And, that's just the way things work. So timing for me is still an issue. Like when the bus leaves at 9 o'clock, I don't really care if you're on it or not. I just don't. I still don't. Like the bus is going to leave at 9 o'clock, and we do. And so have I left players at the hotel? I have. Have we left players in? We have, yeah. We're on the road. Most recently, 2018, we won our most recent national championship, and it was during that season. Top forward, like scored in the national championship game, top forward, top six for sure, power play guy. We were on the road, and we had a very important series at Eau Claire, and we were at the hotel, and we were having a pregame skate at 10 o'clock. So at 9 o'clock, we're headed over to the rink, and we're just checking our stuff into the locker room, and then we're going to jump on the ice for a quick. Well, a kid comes down from his hotel room, this particular player, and he doesn't bring his hockey bag. We're going to the rink for a pregame skate at 10 o'clock in the morning. He doesn't have his bag, and he wants to run back upstairs. I said, forget it. You don't need your equipment tonight. Like, I'll make a lineup change before we get to practice. I mean, it seems so simple and so obvious when you're dealing with such minute details, but my goodness, kids have to be held accountable. And so it's not rant and rave and beat. Again, this kid, I'm telling you, is a top 3 forward for us. Ultimately, and by the way, the kid that stepped in that night played really well. His teammates helped him out. We won the game that we needed to win. The kid learned his lesson, I would think. And more importantly, the other 25 guys certainly learned the lesson. And so, timing is still an issue for me. That hasn't changed in all of this time. So how we go about drawing lineups and how we go about playing the game. I remember distinctly in 1999 playing against Middlebury in the NCAA tournament. Coach Bill Beanie was there, who's the most successful coach in Division III, 8 national titles during his time there. We were shocked at what they were doing. They were playing the game so differently. They were playing matched pairs of forwards up front with 3 backers. Normally we play 3 forwards with 2 guys on the back end. That's standard for hockey, right? 3 forwards, 2 defensemen. They were playing 3 guys off the backside and then matched pairs up front. So they're only rolling 8 forwards. Well, your forwards are getting on the ice a ton more, right? Like you're seeing those top guys a ton more, and then they're changing 3 off the back, but they were jumping up the ice from every single angle. It's like they had 5 forwards on the ice. Well, we learned a little bit in that series about how we were going to change the recruiting process for our defensemen and the new skill set that we were, as opposed to big and lumbering and take care of your net and be heavy on body. It was going to be, you have to be able to defend first, but then you need to be able to jump and join. You have to add offense. You've got to be a part of the solution going forward. So I think the game has changed a little bit in that capacity. There's been a lot of changes. Again, I'm the luckiest coach in Division III because I've always had the right staff with me at the right time. I had the right guy with Andy Brandt a few years ago, who's now the head coach of the Madison Capitals. They just got out of a playoff series with the Green Bay Gamblers. The entire Green Bay Gamblers staff, Pat McCadden, Mason Baptista, Tony Kajava, that's the coaching staff for the Green Bay Gamblers in the USHL. Those kids are all on the 2014 national championship team together as teammates. I've got Ryan Peterson with me right now. Ryan is the right guy for us right now. He was our associate head coach. He was the captain of our 2008 national championship team. He was with me back and was on that. He was an assistant in 14. And then he went to the USHL for a number of years in his development growth, and he's back now. So I've always had, all the way back to Luke Strand, I've always had the right people around, and that's benefited our locker room tremendously.
Cogs, one of the transitions we made here, and with Colonel Smith's help, leadership teams. And I think in the old days it was one captain, two A's, and now you see, even at the NHL level, a myriad of options. Has that changed at all with you guys? Has it been standard? Has it been team dependent? What has that transition or journey been like for you guys?
Yeah, very team dependent, I think. I mean, leadership is such an important thing within your room. And the player led groups are always the best groups. I can go back, and again, you don't know when you have a big year, you don't know how you're going to be successful until you look back at it. Sometimes it's a goaltender, sometimes it's a power play, sometimes it's a penalty kill, sometimes it's an individual, whatever. But you don't know. But the leadership group is so. Here's where I'm stuck again. I will never. You're not going to like this, Cam, but I will never put a letter on a goaltender. I won't put a letter on a goaltender. So when I see guys do it, I don't understand it. By the way, we're also not going to have a third jersey. We're a little more traditional in my stance still today. So there's some things we don't do. What we do is, like at the banquet this year, I announced who will wear the C next year, but did not announce anything else about until we can have exit interviews with our outgoing senior class, and we can ask those guys who have already given us 4 years of service and who have already exhausted their eligibility. I really want to know what they think about the junior class and about the sophomore class in a private setting. So I'm going to interview those guys, and we're going to talk about what happens next. There's been years where I make the team does the vote on the leadership. And then what we typically do is I take somebody from the incoming freshman class, somebody from the sophomore class who are not wearing letters, and we make a leadership group. That group meets on some Mondays, not every Monday, but then we give them enough. The decisions that they make have probably already been made, but we like to help them think it's their decision. So the leadership group will give them a list of things that we think are important for the team. And then when they establish that's the pecking order, then we implement those. And I think the team has more control in that capacity. And then that leadership group comes back to the locker room and talks about why we're going to do whatever it is that we're going to do next. But, the leadership group is important. The guys who wear letters are important. Red Berenson, longtime Michigan coach, back in the day said, if your team is going to win it all, if you're going to win it, you've got to have these key components, one of which is you have to have a goaltender. If you have Connor Hellebuyck, you're probably in a good spot. You have to have a goaltender to win it all. You have to have good senior leadership. And I think that, to me, senior leadership, good senior, that's a little bit of the servant leader idea. They've been here. They understand it. They know what's in the best interest as a rule because of their experience. And then the third piece of that, which is the hardest piece of that, is that your most skilled athletes, your best players, have to be your hardest workers. And I think we've all had teams where the most skilled guy is the guy that sits over on the boards and lets everybody else do the work, or the most skilled guy is the guy who gives you 75% in a conditioning drill. And so that one has been a trigger point for me since then, to make sure I spend a little extra time talking to our guys, to whom much is given, much is expected. And we talk to those guys and say, you're one of our top guys. You also need to be leading the charge when it comes to being on time, getting up to the weight room, putting your time and energy into, because the group is watching. Everybody's paying attention. And again, when you're going to be put up on the status as an All-American, you need to comport yourself in the right direction. So I think there's a lot of different moving parts in that capacity. And I think it's evolving every year for sure. And if you're doing it right, I think it's evolving throughout the year. So you see a different team or a different player in February than you necessarily saw in November. I think as players evolve and as your team evolves too, what we don't do on the front side is we don't make lofty promises we can't keep. So Logan Dombrowski was just named first team All-American. He led the nation in scoring. He's a sophomore. When he came in as a freshman 2 years ago, we didn't tell Logan he's going to play on the top line. We didn't say you're going to be a power play guy. We just offer guys the roster spots, and then we have them, through their work, find their way up the ladder. And so when you come in as a freshman, just be you, show up and play. We'll teach as we go. When you come back as a sophomore, you have a little better understanding of what it is to play college hockey, what it is to be an athlete at St. Norbert College, and what it is to be a student, and the accountability required in all those areas. And then when you come back as a junior, you have to carry the most water, because we want our seniors just to be able to enjoy and go out and have a career year, have a senior year. So I think there's players develop at their own pace, but we clearly are on the meritocracy of what you do. It's not been because we promised any particular player any ice time, or you'll earn that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we'll make the decision that's in the best interest of the team to make sure we give the team the best chance to win on Friday. But it's clearly put on the players' shoulders that everything is here for you. What you do with it between now and the time you graduate, that's up to you.
Cam, the one thing I do want to mention, and Tim, you've mentioned it time and time again, but communication. Communication is one of our pillars, and it's fairly important to Cam and I. It's been important to Cam as a coach for 17 plus years. It's important to me. The job that I did in the Air Force, communication was absolutely core. Voice communication, chat, the whole thing. But it's seemingly what you're describing is coach's intent, right? In other words, in the military, I would call it commander's intent. Like here's the vision for the organization. Here's the direction in which we're going. I have my associate coaches. I have my captains. I have my leadership group. Here's my sort of vision as the head coach of this organization for regardless if I've been there for 3 years or 33 years and whatnot. And seemingly it sounds like at St. Norbert's that communication from you all the way down to the person who's the incoming freshman, whether they're coming from high school or coming from juniors, understands what their role is on that team. I don't necessarily know if you have a comment to that, but I just wanted to say that just in the last 45 minutes, it's clear to me that you have a clear line of communication from your role as the head coach, obviously a very uber successful head coach all the way down. And I think that's very important for the folks that are the aspiring coaches that are listening to this podcast, or the folks that want to play a college sport, or even folks that want to play high school sports.
Yeah, well, I think on the communication side can be silence is communicating too, right?
Sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
body language is communicating. There's a lot of different ways to look at it from that standpoint. But I think kids, that's an area I think kids have changed. Kids used to be a little bit more willing, and like we always say, the door's wide open. Just knock on the door, come on and sit down. Let's talk. We're your best line of defense. We're the first thing you should go to with anything going on in your life, because we can help as long as you're going to hold yourself accountable to whatever the outcome is. I think sometimes kids don't knock on the door these days because they don't want to hear what you have to say. So although you might offer that up, sometimes they don't knock on the door. I think people who back away from confrontation as opposed to running towards, like, we'll have that dialogue, right? Like I'll be open and honest with you as long as you're open and honest with us. And that's all we ask for is 100% in the classroom, in the weight room, on the ice, and we'll give you 100% back regardless of the outcome. I think that communication is an area that's sliding a little bit. We talk all the time, even when we get quiet. You see a team that gets quiet on the bench, or you see a team that gets quiet during practice, and you can kind of sense that they're waiting for something. Let's not sit back and wait. Let's take charge. Let's be in control. Let's make the next thing happen. Because if you're going to wait for things to happen to you, they're going to happen and you're not going to like it, right? Whereas at least if you are willing to stand up and articulate your point, guys used to step on each other's toes just to hold each other accountable. That's gone away a little bit. I think guys, they're waiting more for the coaching staff to do that these days than it used to be. And yet I've said it, but the best teams we've had have been player led. So what happens away from this little time that we have together at the rink is really important. And the culture that's within your program is really important.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit nail on head, and I wish even for myself, like some of those things that you just explained, of things that we've challenged when I was running the team at Norwich. One of the things that I guess we tried to, and with Colonel Smith's help, but like the accountability piece, you brought it up, and to me, it's become the boogeyman, and it's been incredibly negatively shone a light on. And I think there's a ton of ways that you can be positively accountable. You brought up giving 100%. We talk about whether it's praise, reward, whatever. That's also accountability, right? Do you have any systems? You brought up, hey, like, we're going to make the best decision for the team. I think people have taken so much internal, right? And so you make a lineup decision. I don't know if it's happened out in St. Norbert, but at Norwich, it would be like, well, you don't like me as a person. I'm like, no, I love you as a person. I just don't think you're going to give us the best chance to win tonight. Those are two separate conversation, and everything's internalized. Same thing with accountability. It's we don't praise, we don't We don't we don't point out the good even, right? And so we've tried to take kind of a line of that good and seeking out that good, and also identifying that's accountability. When you are doing what you said you would do, that's you are being accountable and trying to show that. Is there a way that you've outside of those quiet practices, could you just talk like maybe it's ways to find those and blow the energy into that player led group, or help those captains or leaders or leadership group take that accountability in a positive way?
Yeah, that's a pretty deep subject in the sense of how to get to where you're talking about it. I remember listening to, because some guys just they're not going to fall in line with what you're talking about, and if this is not the place for you, it's not the place for you. We're just very authentic about how we do things and the opportunity that we're offering. Craig McTavish, longtime NHL guy, was actually the last player in the National Hockey League to not wear a bucket. Remember back in the day, he was still playing. He was the only one in the NHL. And so he ended up getting the Edmonton Oilers job and was the head coach there. They had to win the last 3 games in a row at the end of the season to get into the playoffs, which they did. And then they made it a very improbable deep run all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. And Craig McTavish had this little train going, and he said something interesting one time. It stuck with me. And as a coach, and Cam, you'll understand this, and Colonel will certainly understand it too, as as a think about a squadron or a group that you're leading. He said, everybody brings joy to the locker room. Some when they walk in the morning, and some when they walk out in the afternoon. And you take that for what it's worth, and it's true. So what do we try to do when we know there's going to be a sad face? When we know, we try to make sure that we're around that person. We try to make sure that we talk to them and that we give them the explanation. Just be clear about the explanation as to why. And if you can help them with the why, then they have a goal to look forward to moving forward, and they've got things they can do differently. So when you have 15 forwards, you only dress 12, and you have 9 defensemen, and you only dress 7, and you have 3 goaltenders, only one guy gets to start. It's a trickle down up and down the roster. You know that, but everybody's going to get their opportunity. And what we try to do is present to everybody in October, November, and December opportunity to succeed. And then by the time we get to January, we start limiting opportunities for some guys as they have not gotten to where we need them to be. And when we hit February, and we make it a well-known fact, on this date in February, when there's 2 weeks left in the regular season, we are only going to make lineup changes out of necessity. So you've kind of set them up throughout the year to know what's coming next. And so their job as an individual is to work to get inside that top 7 back end, or to get inside that top 6 up front, or to be the starting goaltender. And by the time we hit that February deadline, we're locked in and we're clocked in, and we expect to show up and get after it. Just like when 2018, we rolled into Lake Placid. I just feel like we're guidance at that point. We are complete guidance off the back end. That's all we are. Is we're if the referee's arm goes up and we're getting a power play, the 5 guys who need to go know what they're doing, and they jump. If the referee's arm goes up and there's a penalty kill, the top pair jump. They know that they start this. The face-off on the left side is very important, and it's this particular centerman who takes that draw, and this is so up and down. I think if you've done your job as a coach to get to March and you're playing in that game, your impact at that point is just guidance off the backside. The rest of the group knows exactly what happens next.
Well said. I've experienced it a little bit, and it is, you said it earlier, it is really hard to get to that level. I believe it's challenging. I think you need a lot in place. I think you have to be comfortable in your own skin as a coach to be able to let go of that. And at that moment, the biggest moment, let them kind of paint their picture, and understanding that how real your impact is at that time. I couldn't agree more on our best teams. But again, I think you have to be able to, as a coach, step back almost. I don't know if you agree with that or whatever, but you have to be able to step back.
Well, I think coaches get too much credit for wins and probably not enough responsibility for losses. I mean, I think that our job is indeed to prepare that group to go out, and if they play to their potential, that's all you're asking for. We just got to make sure that we're getting everything we can every year. At the end of the year, that's the number one question we ask ourselves internally: did we get the most out of this particular group? Did they, this is 2 years in a row now where we've got to a quarterfinal game, one in Michigan 2 years ago, and this year out in Utica, New York, and lost by a goal in a quarterfinal game. Well, what's the goal for this upcoming group? We all talked about it already. The goal is now get back to a quarterfinal game, but it needs to be in Green Bay. We need a home game. That's going to absolutely insist that some things go different October, November, and December and January. You know what I mean? So from us, from a hockey playing standpoint, that's our goal now is let's get back to a quarterfinal, but let's have a home game. And that means we've got to be better in certain areas throughout the year. So that's the message with our returning group. We'll see where it goes. I mean, every year is different. Like I said, I think playing the national championship game actually is an easy game to play. You were there in 2019 out in Stevens Point. I don't think that game's hard to play. I think it's really hard to get there. Getting back to a Frozen Four is really hard. There's so many things that have to go well along the way. The work that's done on that side actually takes some of the stress off on the other side. So once you actually get there, just go play, go have fun, enjoy the experience, enjoy the opportunity. The hard part's done. The grind is October to March.
Coach, I want to pull on a thread just a little bit, and I want to talk about courage, right? So these are just my words, and I'm very interested in your perspective. And it relates a little bit to the accountability piece as well. So courage, just in my world, I define it, there's moral courage and there's physical courage. And I think in a lot of cases in athletics, physical courage, we grew up with physical courage, right? Getting onto the field, getting onto the ice, maybe doing something that's a little bit uncomfortable, but yet there's a result that's driven from me having exuded, my effort and whatnot. And I think that there's no sport that, in my opinion, that probably embraces that more than hockey. Going into the corner to get the puck, blocking the puck before it gets to the goaltender. I mean, that requires courage. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's a level of physical courage that's required there to do that specific act. And the consequences, if you're successful, is an exceptional bruise, potentially an injury and whatnot, but there's a game on the line. And I think that much is clear. But to be able to go in to talk to, to Coach Coghlin, to talk to your associate coaches, to talk to the leaders, the captains, and the leadership group requires moral courage. I need to be able to get uncomfortable in a situation, bring forward my concerns, and expect that the outcome might not be exactly what I want, but yet I'm going to grow from that circumstance. So I would argue that just like taking care of someone physically is equally important to take care of them mentally. So I wanted to bring up I think that the men that you're creating at St. Norbert and you have created, I think that what you're getting towards is them to exude the same level of moral courage that do physical courage, regardless of what the life circumstances are. And if you could just talk about the moral and physical courage piece from your perspective, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think sometimes guys hide in the shadows a little bit. I mean, I think that's something we obviously encourage our guys to have moral conviction. I think schools, higher education in general, the level of accountability necessarily in a classroom is different than what we're asking for from our guys. The toughness that you need to portray in a courage sense is by far and away, I'd say it's 80-20 over easier to invoke and easier to see and easier to talk about. That the mental side of where things are right now, mental health issues, mental health struggles, they're real. Anybody who thinks that's not real, it's real. And, social media doesn't help. The social media side of where the world is today scares the heck out of me, and I'm not good at it. We always make a joke in this office. And I was telling Cam earlier when we were talking about doing this, and I said, I'm going to have my assistant over this morning to make sure that it all lines up and I can get into the link. The joke in this chair is the coaches will look at me and they'll say picnic, and I'll say picnic. And they go, yeah, problem in chair, not in computer, picnic. So when I'm at the keyboard, picnic is a common theme around here. And it takes moral courage and courage for them to stand up and say that too.
Yeah.
I think a healthy dose of encourage, some level of, I don't want to say moral, but some level of courage, some level of discussion, encourage a good debate is, I love a good debate in the locker room. It's interesting to hear what young men have to political season. I mean, go through the politics of it all. It's crazy to see how opposite groups can be and yet still so similar in so many ways. We got to find a way to continue to support the things that we agree on, to continue to grow the areas that we do, that we're together on, and be less divisive about the things that we aren't. I think, the stronger you are in your personal convictions, the easier it is to have moral courage. If you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything, right? I've been very open about our faith-based approach. My wife and I both practicing Catholics. When we had our second child, my daughter Faith, I was sitting on the bed at 2:30 in the morning, and Faith was just born, and the doctor comes in and baby's not breathing. They whisk her away and they take her away, and I go out to the hallway to see what's going on, and the doctor says, "We think she has Down syndrome." And we had gone through all the genetic testing and we had done everything, and her lungs are stuck together and she's not breathing. Well, they whisked her away. They had to transfer. We didn't even go to a hospital that had a NICU because we had no idea that we were going to have any issues with the birth. And so now all of a sudden they're transporting her across town, and I got to go back in and talk to my wife, who's a school psychologist by trade, and she works with kids with disabilities. And I said, "Well, honey, they think she has Down syndrome." And so how did we not see that in genetic testing? And now we look back and we flash back at it and we go, the reason Faith Coghlin came to live with us is we're the parents that are most able to, there's no better fit for her. There's no better family for her. And she's 16 years old. She's going to be 17 here June 3rd. And we're blessed that Faith came to live with us. So there's a level of moral courage that our guys see in the locker room that's very authentic. It's just who we are, right? So, I mean, little things within your life, I think it's more is caught than taught. Right? More is caught than taught. And I think that's true in a big picture. I think it's true in a lot of facets of our life, whether we know it or not.
I appreciate that, Tim, very much. And I look forward to meeting Faith and your son and your wife someday. So thank you.
I think, off camera, we've had some conversation, and one of the main purposes for us on not only to enjoy kind of lifting up, especially people that have been important in our life, but to talk about the synergies here. And Matt, I don't know if it's a good opportunity for you just to talk about, just the similarities, right? Like you and I come from way different worlds. We had similarities in the way that we see people, and you just met Tim of the way he sees people, and maybe how you saw that marriage. Because again, we on the athletic side, I think Cog said it earlier, like we feel like it's crazy that you're sitting here and talking about some of these things, but I don't know, maybe you could just take a minute to talk about some of the similarities in your world and why you feel or felt that excitement back with the team on a fairly full-time basis this year.
I've been thinking about this for a bit. Just in my world, why I see there's such a similarity is to establish credibility, at least in the military and the Air Force to a certain extent, you have to be very technically proficient. You have to be really good at what it is that you do, whether that's fly a plane or whether that's provide command and control or whatever it is that you do, arguably in any service, you need to provide a technical competency or you need to be competent. And it's no different in hockey, right? Hockey, you put the skates on as soon as you can walk. It seems seemingly either the double blade or the single blade goes on, and that becomes the essence of that person. And some folks are like, "Yeah, Timmy can skate. He's going to be an NHL player." I guess just for me is once I got beyond, I realized it was about the human, right? It was about the person. It was about the people. It was about being an empathetic leader and seeing the world from their perspective and how I can motivate them and how I can inspire them to want to be something more than what they were. And there's probably a lot of hockey locker rooms around the world that same thing exists, right? That coach doesn't want to be out in front. He wants his or her players to be the forefront of their attention and their coaching style. And they want them to succeed, not just for the 4 years they're at university or 4 years or wherever, but they want them to succeed in life. And that's what I saw when I became associated with Norwich. And that's what I see with St. Norbert's. And that's no different than the Air Force. If I achieve a rank, I want whomever I mentor to achieve a rank that is higher than mine and have a greater influence than I ever had as a squadron commander or group commander or whatever. One of the things that I'll talk about is leaving a legacy of excellence. There is no doubt that from a Green Knight Pride perspective, you will have left a legacy of excellence. And that is what I tried to do in the Air Force, was leave a legacy of excellence wherever I was. Not just leave it better than I found, but leave the people better than I found it. And if I didn't get credit for that, I didn't care. as long as they became better human beings and they became better airmen, officer enlisted or otherwise, civilians, that was the goal. And that's what I saw in Cam. That's what I saw at Norwich. And I saw that like all the technical stuff, that was pretty standard, like across the board. Yes, D1 folks are more talented. D3 folks have skill sets which might not be to that level, but at their core, it's the same mission. It's the same goal, is to achieve a certain degree of success. And I think that human element piece, I don't think you can underscore that enough, that is the common denominator, regardless of what level it's at, whether it's Pee Wee through NHL. And I think that's what drew Cam and I together, was that piece. And that's what Cam emphasized. That's what his captains emphasized. That's what his leadership group emphasized. It just felt special when I walked in there and I saw that. I'm like, okay, now I get it, and I want to be a part of that. And if that means showing up at 5:45 in the morning because Cam's got something going on, then guess what? Then that makes me excited. And I know that's why you're going into 34 years of St. Norbert, because that's what excites you as well. And you're right. If that excites you that much, it's not work. It's a passion, it's a purpose, and that's why you do what you do.
Have you ever, I think it's easy in the off season, I know you're going through recruiting time right now. Have you ever wrestled with that for a player, or for, in 30 some years? Did you ever tiptoe on your ideals, or, hey, I think I can change that guy? Or have you got it pretty much, you're 32 years into this and you have this structure? Was there a time when you're like, I think I can, I think that guy, I know it doesn't really fit, but maybe I can make it fit, does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I think we all hope for the best and see the best in people, and we want to help everybody. I mean, we want everybody to be successful, right? We just do. I mean, that at the end of the day, that's part of our responsibility, is to make sure that the person's in a better spot for this 4-year cycle, but then for the rest of their lives, and that we're helping with their level of growth. And as I said, we get stuck on the fact that we coach hockey, but I think we coach an awful lot of other areas of their lives, and we're involved in a lot of other things to help young men grow. I've kicked guys off the roster for rules violations of things, and usually, and it's not a rules violation of a written rule that somebody broke, because I don't have a list of rules. I don't. But when we sit in the locker room and we talk as a collective and we say, this is a rule, we're having an issue with this, whatever it might be, this is a rule for the rest of the year, everybody on board? And they all say, yes, sir, we're all on board. Yep, we agree. Now the rule can't be broken. And so when you then go against the entirety of your roster and you decide you're going to make a decision that impacts you, but it also has a negative impact on the greater good, you're no longer a part of the group. And so we bounce guys. And it was just on this last campaign where we're building this, the new ice rink, and I had to go out and ask some alumni for some money. And the first kid that stepped up and threw 6 figures at this deal was one of the young men in the late 90s that I bounced off the roster because he broke a team rule that the team set. And he talks about it in his day-to-day work. He reflects on that. I forgot even what the circumstances were until he said he wanted to meet because he wanted to make a donation. I sat with him and listened to him. It has stuck in his core of who he is, and he's become a multi, and he's done it built on the premise of not doing things in the greater good of the team. And now seeing his way more clearly these years later. If I read the email to you that I got from him after the fact, after he sent 6 figures into this project, I mean, it was shocking even to me. So I think there's consequential impacts that we have that we're not even aware of. I mean, I think that's true. And it goes both ways. It's on the positive side and on the negative side too. So I think when you're able to listen to that after the fact, it carries a lot of water for me.
I know you guys are both Canadian, so I'm outnumbered here, but so Tim, you've been in the States for a long time, and just, with the Four Nations piece, you want to talk a little bit about who you were pulling for? Is that pretty much automatic? You're pulling for Canada?
No, matter of fact, I don't have a favorite NHL team. I don't have a favorite. I don't pull for any. I really don't. I cheer for people. It's about people to me, right? I cheer for people. So John Cooper was here, coached the Green Bay Gamblers in town. He's a BC boy. He's from northern British Columbia. So I know Coop, so I'm cheering for Coop. I go up and down all the time. Winnipeg Jets right now. I'm kind of on the Jets bandwagon. Hellebuck obviously is the goaltender there, but one of their forwards is Mason Appleton. Mason skates out of our rink in the summertime. So I cheer for Mason. I really don't put my hat in the ring on Canada, US. I cheer for people, and I like players. I like coaches, and to me that's the end all be all. So I'm not really a fan per se, and I didn't. To me, that was the most exciting stretch of hockey I think I have ever seen in my life. And I go back to the Canada Cup, the 8-game series when with the Russian Red Army, when the CCCP and the Canada put together an all-star team, and those were just wars in the 70s, absolute wars. This having best on best, USA, Canada, with the coaching at that level and the speed of that game, I just thought it was electric. I thought that hockey was absolutely phenomenal. Didn't have a dog in the fight. The fact it goes to overtime and arguably the best player in the world scores the goal, I thought it was a momentous moment for hockey. I think it's something that as well watched and well attended, it's coming back.
That's awesome.
Yeah, what connection you've had? I mean, the Green Bay coaching staff has been on the USHL. Like, that's something you guys have, do you have access, communication with them? Obviously, it sounds funny, you live in the same city, but you get busy, right? Like, what, you had Coop and Newsy and Reuter and Tapper.
Yeah. We've always had really good relationships with all those guys. And the interesting thing is, in our world, Cam, and you know this, is all those guys know somebody's a buddy of theirs whose kid is now playing juniors and looking at his options. And so we all try to lend a hand where we can. I think, John Cooper said it best. Actually, Pat McCadden, who's the head coach of the Gamblers now, played here for Coop. And Coop said it best, and we regurgitate the line every time we get a chance to talk to a family. If I'm in a recruiting setting, John Cooper told Patty Mack, he said, if you play Division III, you have to play at St. Norbert. It's a Division I hockey program that plays Division III. And so when John Cooper tells Patrick McCadden that, and then Patty Mack comes and plays for us, and he's our captain on the 2014 National Championship team, you can use those things. Derek Lalonde, Newsy, you talked about him, Blash. I mean, just look at the guys that have come through the USHL. So we have really easy access, really good communication with those guys as coaches. Even the Green Bay Packers, I've been, again, because of my ties with the head equipment guy there, Red Batty, who just retired, and his assistant, T-Bone, Tom Bakken, is the military tie there that does the flyover. I've been on the sidelines with the Packers a ton. And to me, I don't know football. I grew up with football. I never saw a football game until I got to college. And so, but to me, to be around the coaches in the NFL and to listen to the way they dialogue and the communication piece that goes. And so I've been on the sidelines in Pittsburgh. I've been on the sidelines in Seattle, Atlanta at the NFC Championship game a few years ago. A lot of times one of my equipment guy or one of my T's does the sideline cam. So he works here in Green Bay all the time. So we've had good access to be around the NFL guys. And I'm not saying that to say anything other than what gets my gears going is that communication piece, is listening to how the dialogue happens and who communicates what. And they're pretty tight-lipped on their communication, as you know, from a security standpoint, but that's what I enjoy, right? So we even have access. I think it was after we won in 18 and we were having our ring ceremony, we had the president, Mark Murphy, come over and say a few words. It happened to be a 100-year anniversary for the Green Bay Packer football team from 1919 up through the 19 season. And he came over and addressed our group. So, it's certainly any access we have that we think if we can lend an ear to our group and it's something different from an outside space, but has a similar conversation, that adds value to what we do.
You want to get really crazy and how small our world is, Cogs, is I was in Sioux City with Luke.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working he's my boss, Luke Strand, who's now again at Mankato, and coming back to Green Bay. And that's where Luke coached with you. And Coop is at the Gamblers, and he grabs me because Pat McCadden's getting recruited to my alma mater up at Tech.
Good Tech.
And so I sit with Pat and give him, I don't even know, it's 30, 40 minutes asking questions. Yeah. But just like, that's how small world our, yes. And that's what, the funny part, you brought up the difference, like I say this just because I've learned it, but like we're in the 99% of the world that lives in the US and never served, and Colonel Smith's in the 1%.
Yes.
And And so we think our world's small, but like it's big to us, but it's small. And then I think Matt used chuckle, right? Because you've got the same thing on your side. Our hope through all of this is we've found in the last multiple years that we've been on this like collision course of like, Canadian born person first. And again, I'll be the first to say I got into this later, not because I didn't care, but I was chasing the things you talked about earlier, Cox. I think it maybe makes me appreciate where I'm at more because of seeing the other side. It became more, that conviction became easier. Like as I even got to Norwich and had some success, people didn't understand when I didn't want to leave, and loving the people, and then, loving the kids and having those relationships. And then we've been on this collision course. So as my time wound down here, being able to step off with Colonel Smith, him kind of approaching me and saying, let's try to take this out and just bring this to the marketplace, I guess. I don't know, whatever it is, and help people, because I came to it later. You came to it. Matt came to it. So here's three different worlds, right? And really sitting here, we're really talking about the exact same thing. And there's a lot of people that we've met in a very short time that have needed either a boost, some clarity on that, or helping them with that conviction. And you've said you've had different people that have come with you, right, Cogs? And they probably didn't have that exact conviction at the time, and now they've come back, right? So it's really come back to, I don't know, the excitement that I get, Matt, again, the excitement I can see he gets. And we're really talking about the same thing, but we're coming at it from all these different places. Well, so thank you very much. We'll wrap a bow on this, but Cogs, again, just I guess I'll end with this, and maybe you could just talk a little bit about a rink being named after you. I just think like what an honor. And Matt said it, and I've been around you long enough, and I know that you just go, and as a coach and as a mentee of you don't do it for that recognition. You do it to help, and you're more probably proud of the conversations, the text chain, the call you get, the email you mentioned. But there is also pride in those pictures, in those moments. I've seen some videos sharing with your family to get the rink named in your honor. Maybe we could just close with that.
Yeah, I never saw that coming, and it was to me that's, I don't know, it's more of a basketball thing, like, put the coach's name on the court or whatever. And, I kind of looked at it as a longevity award. I don't know what else to call it. The fact that the way that worked out that particular night was probably as good as it could have possibly worked out. My son was playing a high school game on the other side on Rink 3. And then he got permission from his coach to step away at our intermission break. And then my wife and my daughter show up, and I'm looking around like, what the heck is what are these people doing? And then they made the announcement, and I actually apologized to the opposing coach. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know there was going to be a delay. You know how coaches, we talk to each other. Hey, I've got a senior introduction. I've got a mini mite game between periods. I walked by the other bench, and I said to the coach at Concordia, I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on right now. And then all of a sudden the president shows up and the athletic director's there. My son skates across the ice from the other side. It was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy. So what now with this new rink being built, we hope we just leave this one behind and let them start fresh on the other side. That's not really my shtick.
So, Coach, one of the things that Kim and I try to do is we found that throughout our life experiences and in today's modern world, we're really good at obviously recognizing people after they're gone, right? So, hey, that person was amazing. And here's all these things that we're going to talk about this person for the next days or weeks or months and all that sort of stuff. But I just want to say that it's a pleasure to have met you. It's a pleasure to know your background, your history. It's a pleasure to know that there's a rink being named after someone who has such integrity and who leads by example. And the fact that we're celebrating you and what you mean to other people and what you mean to your players and your family and the legacy that you left, I think there's no more special way that I think you can be honored than just by the fact that we're celebrating that now and not after you're done coaching and all that sort of stuff.
Well, you're too kind. I appreciate that. I guess it's easier to see that in somebody else than it is in your own self.
Sure.
I certainly agree with the sentiment all the way around. I would prefer it with somebody else.
Sure. All three of us would prefer it with somebody else. And that's why I'm doing it on your behalf. And I look forward to shaking your hand someday and bringing you some awesome Vermont maple syrup with me.
I love it. Let's game on. Get it on the calendar.
Perfect.
Cogs, well, thanks again so much for your time. And
Thank you,
I
Coach.
hope, hope everybody enjoyed this, and I know they will. And we're stepping out of the maroon and gold here at Norwich, and we're free agents. The St. Norbert green and gold. Matt's got his green and gold on today, and we're going to be rooting for you. But thank you for everything, Cogs. Again, your guidance, Matt understands it better now. I think people will understand it better now. Your availability to a young coach who, you probably don't realize the impact you had on me. So I just want to publicly say thank you.
Well, as I told you when I checked in just to see how things were, I'm always in your corner. I'm a fan. I'm supportive, and always pulling for you and always pulling for good things.
Thanks, boss. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, Colonel. Pleasure to meet you.
Likewise.